Hi guys, I'm James McIntosh and today I'm joined with our Football Operations Manager Mark Summerhill for a catch up on everything Gosport really, looking back at last season and now looking ahead at next season, the 2024-25 season. And Mark, you're at training today and how good does it feel to be back at Gosport again?
Yeah, it's always a nice feeling to be back in pre-season. Although the work doesn't stop when the season finishes. We've been in many times. Obviously, chatting with players, working with Pat and Joe on what things are going to look like this season. Obviously, working with the chairman. So we've not been away, but yeah, it's always nice to get back on the training field and get the balls out and see the players back in. So yeah, really nice feeling, and obviously the weather helps on a nice Saturday morning.
Yeah, I was going to say it's lovely down here, so that always has to help. And like I said, we'll be talking a bit about Gosport's future next season, but I want to take it back to last season. Mark, have you recovered yet from it?
Um, it took a little while, if you can ever say we're going to be recovered from that. I think the manner in which the game ended, and obviously ended the whole season, the playoff game at Salisbury is bitterly disappointing. But thankfully we've had 6 or 7 weeks now to try and get over it, and hopefully that can add as a bit of motivation going into this season. We know what we achieved last season, and hopefully we believe we've sort of built on that during pre-season with some of the guys we brought in. So we'll be positive going into the start of a new season.
Well, speaking of things positive, I want to take it back to that Chesham game because we won 4-2. And I think it caught a lot of people surprised in that result because I was speaking to the likes of Rafa Ramos, Toby Stewart after the game, and everyone seemed really motivated after they had won it. You had beat the champions, and it was like a real motivator boost for going into it. And then after winning that game, I'm guessing it was like motivations were running high in the changing rooms. And was this echoed by Pat and Joe and yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, seemed to be the perfect way to finish the last game of the normal season, being at home in front of a really good crowd, beating the champions. I mean, what more could you want going into the playoffs? You couldn't ask for that. We'd been a little bit, not jittery, but we'd had a couple of performances maybe building up to that, but probably weren't quite where we wanted to be. And I think the end to the normal season was probably a little bit unusual, where we qualified for the playoffs early. And then we sort of didn't find it difficult to keep going, but results weren't quite what we were expecting. So to put it all together on the last day with a good home win against Chesham was the perfect way to go into the playoffs.
And then you had the likes of AFC, Tottenham, and Salisbury. They were all performing. And did you favour Gosport going into it? Like it was anyone's to win the playoffs?
I always favoured us, not just saying that because I'm obviously here and part of it, but as a team during last season, I think as a squad, as a whole group, we showed that form, if we did have a dip in form, we would bounce back very, very quickly. If we had a bad game, we'd normally put it right very, 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 very quickly. And I always felt our group in a one-off game, whether it be a cup game, which you can almost say a playoff is, a playoff semi-final is like a cup game. I always felt it didn't really matter what form we went into that in. We are more than capable of just turning up on the night. And I think you can see from our second half performance in the playoff game, we absolutely turned up on the night and were well worth a win. Although, for lots of reasons, we didn't get it and we felt thoroughly hard done by. But I felt we went into that. I was always confident.
Well, you've literally just summed up my next question really well there, because I was about to say, you couldn't have asked for a much better performance from the boys. Charlie Vasmer getting that goal. It was late on, I would say, into the game. I think we had 20 minutes to play after that goal, but we looked really strong in possession and we were really starting to silence that loud Salisbury crowd. But decisions, it's safe to say, they did go against us. Dan Wooden, I felt he was robbed of a goal, and Charlie Vasmer, if you watch back the clip, he was clearly outside of the penalty box, and I'm not even sure it was a red. Maybe a harsh yellow, but yeah, I didn't feel like it was a red whatsoever. And I want to say, if that final would have been played at Gosport Borough's ground, so Privet Park, do you feel like the referee could have swung decisions? And do you feel like the motivation, well, not motivation, the atmosphere of the game got to his head a bit?
I think that's a really difficult question. I think we all felt that Salisbury probably shaded the first half, just probably shaded it. And I think we were well on top for the second half, and I think we would have been worthy winners had we gone on. Yes, we definitely got the wrong end of some decisions. Need to be really, really careful sort of how and what I say, but I think the game was too big for the officials. I think the crowd was definitely too much for them. I was in dialogue with the fourth official for virtually most of the night because he was stood next to us, and there was. I don't want to get him into trouble also, but there was certainly a mutual feeling that the officials just weren't up with it. And particularly the assistant our side, who was a long way behind all night. I think the referee made some strange decisions for both teams, and almost a couple of decisions where he changed his mind under pressure. I don't think he was any different for either of the two teams. I just think the game was too much. I think he was too far away from it, and he got the key decisions wrong. And it doesn't matter, they had some bad ones. We obviously had match-changing, result-changing ones go against us. So that does make it really, really tough to take in such a big game for all the teams. Both semi-finals and the final. I saw a very, very similar decision in the final. In the Tottenham Salisbury game against Charlie Kennedy, which looked just as shocking as the one we got. Doesn't make it right, but it was I was very disappointed with the officials' performance on that night. But full credit to Salisbury. They stuck at it. They took their chance late on, and then fair play to the guy with the cool head to finish the penalty the way he did in front of a big crowd on a big pressure occasion. So I think we can be feel really hard done by the officiating on the night.
And then also speaking about the officiating, obviously it did impact the game with the goal going not against us and the penalty incident. But do you think it also affected the boys mentally on the pitch as well? So when these key decisions they're not going for you, can it feel like it's not your day? And how does that affect the boys on the pitch as well?
I think it probably affects momentum of the game, without any shadow of a doubt. I think our guys are probably professional enough to try to focus on what they're doing. I think when that whistle goes, obviously they're focused on the instructions and what the plan is for the night. They are very, very good at that, and we've got some experienced lads out there, like Charlie, Rory, Woody, that have been at big clubs, played in big games. Probably are a little bit better than that. But I think it's probably the rest of us and probably the atmosphere in the stadium it affects when officials are making what are perceived to be bad decisions. In what, there's not just Gosport and Salisbury fans there. There's neutral fans there that have come to watch what was a decent game. But there were just some bizarre decisions. And the social media clearly shows that the penalty he gave at the end was clearly outside the box. Was it a yellow or a red? You can argue all night. Had it been at Privet, would it have been different? Probably. But it's luck of a draw in that with who you get on the night.
And you said about that keyword momentum there. And obviously, Gosport, we had one of the youngest squads in the league. And I felt sometimes that it did impact towards the later stages of the game. So I saw a couple games last season where we might have been winning 2-1 or we were winning up until the final stages. And then we might have conceded that late goal and the momentum, it fully swung towards the other team. And they would go on to steal it quite late on. And do you feel like having this late team who hadn't really had too much experience, maybe, do you feel like that hurt Gosport as well?
Not really. I think you can call it inexperience, you can call it age. I think sometimes the naivety of youth, in particular the likes of Alex Barca, who, whatever the occasion, where they've probably not experienced upset before, are just playing because that's what they know, and they just play. And they get caught up in the atmosphere. The atmosphere was great at Privet Park last year whenever we were at home, and for lots of away games for Gosport fans, it made it a great atmosphere. But I think sometimes naivety of youth, although it can cost you in other ways, like we probably cost us at Welling in the FA Cup and one or two other places where some sort of rash decisions from the younger ones might have let us down. But I think in a big occasion like that, the naivety of youth is sometimes a real plus for you, where they haven't got the mental scars of previous disappointments. They've probably all got a big mental scar now for a big disappointment on that night. So that we won in the learning bank from all.
And can that motivate Gosport going into next season, losing this final in such a dramatic way?
Yeah, I think so. I think it should give us real confidence that we're more than capable of making the playoffs. What we haven't done is what a lot of clubs have done locally, and in each to their own gone out and spent stupidly. because the club still has the ultimate aim of trying to build a sustainable club where it's not just supplemented by the chairman like it is at the moment. So yeah, I think there's definitely we've retained a lot of last year's group, which is really good. They'll come in jubilant. I think I'm not going to say it's easy to sign new players because it never is. But contradicting myself, it was probably easier to get some of the targets we wanted this year because of how well we've done last year. And those guys have certainly come into the squad because they want to win things and they certainly want to be in a promotion fight. So I think we're going to be in a really, really good place. And probably, let's be honest, come August, when the first league game starts, we'll see where we're going to be. Yet nothing will be decided then. As we get towards Christmas, we'll take stock and see what's going to be a realistic challenge.
I was going to say, I think this was really echoed, that message in Pat and Joe's post-match interview with that final game against Salisbury. They had said we had the pillars of a great squad and we could challenge again for the title and playoffs next season. But I felt after that post-match interview, it got a lot of respect from other fans. Like, they weren't criticising the referee, and instead they were just praising the Salisbury. They were praising their fans, all their players. And I'm guessing this was also echoed in the changing room afterwards. They just said, maybe let's go again next season, lads, and didn't want to focus on the negatives and instead the positives of this season.
Yeah, it's a tough gig, isn't it, to lose a playoff semi-final, and like I said before, to lose a playoff semi-final in that manner where you feel so hard done by because of a clear injustice. That's a difficult gig, walking into a dressing room after that, because they haven't just got 11 players. There's a squad of players in there. There's the subs, there's the unused subs, there's all of us in there, the staff, and you've got to go in and try and pick that group up. My message to Pat and Joe afterwards, we need to be proud of what we've achieved this season. No one at the start of the season would have put us down for a playoff place. And I think the way that Pat and Joe came in, revolutionised the squad, and their work on and off the field to change the whole culture at the football club was a real success. And I think that's a key message to get across in that sort of stage. And what was really nice was I went onto the pitch at the end, which I don't always do, to help one or two of the sort of younger lads off who were quite clearly upset. And there were lots of fans sort of shouting out and calling out and saying to keep people's heads up and we'll go again next year. And as much as we just had a bit of disappointment, the fans are already looking forward to next season, 30 seconds a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes after the game, which is fantastic credit to the Gosport fans. And that, for me, personally gave me a big boost in what was a really, really sad moment to know that people were behind us and were already looking forward to next season, which in those really low moments, all you can do is look forward to the future.
And you mentioned about the importance of the fans there. And from previous seasons, I wasn't at Gosport, but I've heard a lot of bad stories involving like them in the previous seasons. So I think it was the 2022-23 season. So the season before Pat, Joe, you joined, they were struggling in the league and they had just nearly been relegated. So going into this last season, there was a lot of, I wouldn't say bad hopes for the managers, just a lot of people didn't expect a lot from Pat and Joe maybe to what they did achieve. So I saw a lot of popular influencers. They were saying we might finish below, I don't know, 17th or around that region. But in the end, we did do really well. And next season, we won't be going into next season as an underdog. We'll be going in as one of the stronger teams. I feel like that's going to, massively favour us as well. But how important is it having this fan chemistry now with the team as well? Something we've been lacking in the last previous seasons.
Yeah, I've said it numerous times. I said it in a lot of interviews last season, and it's something that I really mean. It's not just something I'm saying, which is easy to say these things on interviews. I think the Gosport fans are so important. Home games, when you get 1,000 people there and the noise they make. And Pat and Joe always talk about the fans in their talks about how, how sometimes it feels like when we're kicking towards that clubhouse end, the fans are almost sucking the ball in towards a goal, and that's no mean feat. For me personally, where the Gosport fans really come into their own was the away games. I think the support on the away games was absolutely fantastic. I remember the night at Hungerford, a really, really big away win for us at a really important time. And the Gosport fans outsung the Hungerford town and almost made it feel like a home game on a Tuesday night away. I'll always remember the Hendon game towards the end of the season where the fans put on a coach and got themselves there in great number and sung from start to finish, afterwards all the way home. They were just incredible. And what they do is just add to that feel-good factor about the culture piece I talk about. It's not easy to change culture in any organisation, and I felt Pat and Joe did that, and I think the fans were a massive part of that. And it was a great place to be involved in last season. And yet you can't underestimate or can't thank the fans enough for their part in what they built and that sort of feel-good factor last season. I just hope, I'm sure we will, but I just hope that we can recreate that and give them something to get behind again this season.
And then another team who's doing well is our under-18s team, and they smashed it in the Portsmouth Senior Cup semi-final, beating Portsmouth Academy, and I think that shocked a lot of people in itself. We did get to the final, we did lose, but in the end, it was quite literally men against boys. But basically, I still thought they played great in that semi-final, played great in the final as well, and we have a really bright future now at Gosport.
Yeah, I mean, the under-18s are in this morning, some of them. I think there's 5 or 6 of our 18s out there this morning. I think what we forget is that our under-18s aren't actually under-18s. They're younger than that. And actually, they're all still going to be about this year. I think a lot of them are 16. I think there's a few that are 17. So we're going to have them around for 2 or 3 seasons. And, you know, we saw in the cup games that we played them in that they are developing really quickly. I enjoyed the game against Portsmouth. I thought they did a fantastic job that night against Portsmouth, and I thought they did a fantastic job against the Navy in the final. I watched both games. I think probably fair to say they ran out a bit of steam and were probably outmuscled a bit in the second half by a big physical Navy team. But I think they're a fantastic proposition for the future. One thing the chairman's really keen on is how we develop the under-18s and how we bring players through. We can't constantly be going out and bringing players into other clubs. It's just, again, it's just not sustainable. I think Zach's done a fantastic job, and I think he's made a really good start in that season. He's got another 2 or 3 seasons before we start seeing some of them regularly play in the first team, which is what we've got to do.
And can we see a couple of those players come into the first team this season rather than just playing the cup games?
Yeah, I mean, they've been training regularly with us anyway, so they're no strangers to the first team squad. There's some changes to the league this year, but it says you can use 5 subs from 5 rather than the 3 from 5 last year. So it will make sense to fill the bench more than we did last year, when on occasion we maybe just didn't. Overly struggle to fill the sort of 4th and 5th spot if we had injuries. So I think there'll be a lot of opportunities for our under-18s this year, and with that drive, like I've just said, to mention to try and make the club more sustainable by try and keep things more efficient financially. But I think there's some excellent opportunities for our under-18s to fill those places in the squad. In fact, they're going to have to. That's the fact.
And then talking about filling players into the squad, now looking ahead at next season, we've brought in 4 new players, and the players we've brought in, they have some real good calibre, and I think it's shown real good intent from Gosport. So we got players joined from National League South, some players joining from, Southern Premier League, obviously, and it's shown some real good intent now.
Yeah, so we had to replace Toby. That's a real shame to lose Toby, but it's natural in his progression. The Portsmouth are going to want to put him somewhere in the National League. So we wish him all the best. And also we brought Max in from Poole, really experienced, established goalkeeper at the level. Asher and Cam Murray in the midfield. We needed to strengthen in there. We tried to get Cam a couple of times towards the end of last season. We tried to get Asher a couple of times during last season. So we're really, really pleased to get those 2 in to bolster the midfield. And obviously Dan up front, no stranger to scoring against us. So hopefully Dan will hit the ground running this year. So yeah, I mean, some really good signings, and hopefully we're not done yet. We're still working on a few bits and pieces, but yeah, they're probably the 4 key ones through the door at the moment for sure.
And then re-signings, they're just as important. And then getting the confirmation of Dan Wood and Rory Williams, they're re-signing for another season. And how crucial was it securing those 2?
Yeah, I mean, all of the lads we've re-signed, which is a large number from last season, is incredibly pleasing that guys want to come back and buy in and probably feel some unfinished business with what happened in the playoffs. So yeah, I mean, obviously, Woody is a centre forward and Rory is an experienced defender, so club captain. They are probably 2 really, really big players for the group on and off the field. So we're naturally delighted to have those 2 back, and delighted to have all those that have re-signed back, because they all offer something. We wouldn't just be re-signing people for the sake of it, because there's no value in that. So yeah, we're really pleased with all the re-signings, and we're just working on a couple of bits and pieces with a couple of others. Hopefully we'll get them sorted out in the next week or two.
I think it's safe to say the squad's coming along really nicely, Lau, for next season. And we've got some pre-season games now to test them in it, and where we get to see a proper look at the new squad in action. And Mark, the pre-season games coming up, they're brilliant. So we got Portsmouth, we got Bournemouth 11, we got Petersfield, so some brilliant games. And do you think this is going to give us some real good preparation for next season?
Yeah, I mean that's what pre-season is about, isn't it? What you will see in the early pre-season friendlies is 11 in the first half and a different 11 in the second half. Now, obviously, we won't be doing that when the season starts because you can't, and that is purely because we're looking at things. Anything Pat and Joe do, there's always there's always a reason behind it, and there's certain pre-season games we'll be looking to work on the in possession stuff. There'll be certain games we'll be looking at out possession stuff. There'll be other games we're looking at other bits and pieces. So every pre-season game is an opportunity to work on something, and there's there is certainly no pre-season games where we're just getting legs in minutes. There's an objective to all of them, and there'll be an objective to every set of 45 minutes out there. So no matter what people see of the different 11s we're putting out and the different players and some different trialists we're looking at, there's always an objective to those 45 minutes. So pre-season is far from a case of just getting legs in minutes, although that's important. We will be working on some serious stuff when the season starts.
And then finally, Mark, I think we've talked about it quite a lot in this interview about our main goals for this season, about maybe getting promotion, maybe aiming for that playoff spot. But what do you want to achieve out of this season?
I mean, what do I want to achieve? Personally, my job is to give Pat and Joe the tools and the environment they need to do their job, and what the squad needs to do their job. So we're all aligned on we want to be in the playoffs again. We want to go one or two better than this season. Certainly, we'll be looking for a run in the FA Cup. We know how important that is for the club. Sustainably. I'll keep talking about sustainability, but that's a real target for the club this year. We can't just keep relying on one person to finance the whole club. It's just not, that is not sustainable, and that's not good for any of us. So what would be really good is to see season tickets continue to go. I know we're towards the 100 mark already, which is fantastic for this stage, being as we've not kicked the ball in pre-season. It would be nice to see people get behind the 1944 club that the club's just launched, because that is going to play a massive part in help financing the club, and there's a massive chance for people to win some money for themselves in the 1944 club. So just to see people get behind the club and to see more people get involved, and if there's people out there, we need to bring people in to help help run the off-field requirements of the clubs. I keep talking about it. We're heavily reliant on one person at the moment. I'm not saying one person. We all know we're reliant on the chairman. So we've got to try and. There's a lot of people and a lot of hard work off the field. So we just need to try and match the on-field success with off-field success, and try and bring some more people into the club.
Well, I think it's fair to say it's really good looking forward to next season. So make sure you get your season tickets, Gosport fans, and even maybe look at joining the 1944 club, like Mark said. But Mark, for the final words, can we get an up the borough?
Yeah, up the borough.
And final words from me, up the borough.